for us, it was all hands to the pump, right, how do we keep this business alive? Because basically the demand obviously completely evaporated, and then existing customers struggled to make payments because their income had disappeared. So you've got your existing customers, then all the people, we've got a short-term rental business as well, which is a smaller part of the business, but it's more flexible. So as you can imagine, a lot of those cars just came back because people just said, well, I can't earn money as an Uber driver anymore, or ride-hailing driver, so I'll just return the cars. So suddenly I think we got about 200 vehicles back, which we had to store. But then obviously we had to keep paying for these vehicles and servicing the debt on them, etc. So it was incredibly difficult.
Hi everybody and welcome to FEBE Founder Stories. Juliet Barrett.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
I love your shoes.
Thank you. They're one of several pairs.
Let's just make sure camera one can see
I have to
these
be careful, not the
gorgeous
bottom, so I do go dog walking in them.
Oh my gosh, they're just lovely. I love them. Is that a special occasion, or is it you just bring these out all the time?
I have a bit of an obsession with shoes, but I tend to buy them, leave them in shoe boxes, so my nieces are going to be very well looked after when I die.
Well, let's hope that. I don't know where to go with that statement.
Yeah, they'll come back in fashion by then, hopefully.
Beautiful shoes. And we are joined by Nicko Williamson. Nicko, lovely to see you.
Thanks for having me.
And today we're going to be talking about the great things that you're doing with WeFlex.
Yeah.
Nicko, what I always find fascinating about entrepreneurs is just the courage and determination that entrepreneurs have to basically do what they do. What's really interesting about you is that you've been doing this for a long time. You're a young guy, but you started right in your early 20s with your first business, right?
I did, yeah.
So, I mean, it's a bit of a weird question to start with, but in terms of entrepreneurs, are they born or what is it, born or made? Is it nature or nurture?
Yeah.
I guess from your point of view, and I'm sorry, you've probably been asked this a million times, but I'm guessing this is very much part of your nature.
I think so. I mean, I did think about this. I mean, it's kind of, I was the kid reading all the business books at school, which is a bit weird, I think, when you're a teenager. But then the environment that you're in plays a big part. And, you know, I was lucky enough to have supportive parents who said that I could live rent-free while I started my first business, which obviously is a pretty lucky thing to have. And they also didn't say that I was completely insane when I decided to go off and start this eco-friendly taxi business at age 23 with literally not an idea about starting a business. And they encouraged me to do it. So, I mean, you know, that was a key part of it. But
before then, had you know, people talk about the 10,000 hours, right? Where you go and do something somewhere and you learn the trade. Had you done the 10,000 hours before the age of 23?
Definitely not 10,000 hours.
You've done some hours.
No, but my story really is I was doing modern history at Bristol. You know, completely irrelevant degree to anything. And at the same time I was writing my dissertation, I was writing a business plan at the same time for ClimateCars, my first business. Because I was itching to start my own business. I remember when I was 18, but I didn't know what to do. And at that point I was really, really immature and really didn't know anything. So I thought I'll go to university, pad it out for a bit, try and figure out what to do. So by the time I'd left university, I had this idea and I was literally straight out of the blocks trying to raise money for this business. So I was literally a year from leaving Bristol, I was live with ClimateCars.
Are your parents entrepreneurs?
No,
where did you get it from?
Complete reverse. My dad was a headhunter for like 30 plus years. You know, very, you know, successful headhunter, but he's by nature very risk averse and very sensible, and you know, we had a very comfortable life and stuff like that. And my mother was was actually in the city for a bit and then looked after us, me and my sisters. So so no, I had a comfortable life, but again, low risk, so I wasn't afraid of risk.
Yeah, because I was going to say, like, obviously a risk take, because if you had no sort of experience of a business and like went live within a year, you're obviously not afraid of failure.
No, I wasn't. I really wasn't. And I think that's one of the benefits of starting really young is that, you know, if I'm starting now, I mean, I've got kids and the house and all, you know, all the usual sort of trappings that you have. You can take a lot more risk when you're 22 than you can when you're, dare I say, approaching 40.
Living rent free.
Yeah, living rent free, and you know, you don't have a mortgage, you don't have overhead. You know, you just got your own overhead, which is minimal. Yeah, was minimal.
ClimateCars, obviously by the name ClimateCars, were they all electric cars?
No, it was before.
Hybrid.
It was before electric cars were sort of viable. So it's hybrid. It was right at the beginning. You know, when the Toyota Prius was this funny little car that no one really knew about. We kind of helped popularise those cars.
To describe WeFlex, am I right in the way I described this? That if I, for example, am a driver with Uber, I would come to you to get an electric car, which I would come to you to get that car.
Yeah. So you could be what it's aimed at is ride-hailing drivers. So you work for Uber, Bolt, the whole, you know, whichever company you choose to work for, you come to WeFlex, you pay a small down payment deposit and then a weekly payment. At the end of the agreement, you own the car outright. But at any time, you can give 4 weeks' notice and return the vehicle. So it's a flexible financing product. Again, aimed at people who life might change, they might decide they don't want to do it anymore, so they can just hand the car back with very minimal termination fees. That's the pitch, and it's all electric, yeah.
When you were like 21 and like starting out, were you passionate about this, or did you just see a gap in the market? I mean, what was that, not light bulb moment, 'cause that's really cheesy, but what was that moment you thought, do you know what, this is a goer?
It was definitely seeing a gap in the market, and I was sort of seeing what was happening at the time. Al Gore had come out with An Inconvenient Truth, if you remember that. That was a film about climate change, and suddenly climate change was becoming a big deal, and I could see businesses were grasping onto this, and so I was looking for a product that I thought would fit nicely with that, and a taxi service is quite good because all businesses use lots of taxis, or in London anyway they use lots of taxis. So I sort of went, okay, that's the product, and then figured out how to do it.
Okay.
In many ways, you were really ahead of your time, because that's what I was getting to earlier with my question about if you look at what you're doing with ClimateCars, with WeFlex, this is hyper sustainability in terms of the transportation that you're using. So this has been something that has always been your USP here, how you stayed ahead of the market.
No, it sort of has, and it's sort of, I mean, look, I guess it's sort of accidental, I've sort of ended up in this sort of transporty space, and I think it's interesting, and the electrification side I find really interesting, because I think it's such an easy way to reduce emissions, you know, look at the taxi market, there's, you know, all these people driving around all day long in polluting vehicles, switch them into electric, you know, that emissions is gone, or depending on where you get the power from, you know, obviously public transport's the other route, but it's really, I think it's a really easy way to reduce emissions, so I find it interesting.
So it must be nice for you being a part of the solution here, with the horrendous pollution that is created from guzzling cars.
So. Yeah, no, and it feels like a good business to do. I think our team, like, it's good in terms of hiring people. It's good because we've got a clear mission that we want to electrify the ride-hailing market, and it's very early stage. I think that's what's so exciting about our current business. So if you look at Uber at the moment, there's about 6,000 electric cars on Uber just in London, out of about 45,000. So it's really early. And you look at the whole UK market, you've got over 200,000 licensed private hire drivers or ride-hailing drivers, and the electrification is minuscule at the moment. So there's a massive opportunity, which is really exciting. And I just, from a personal perspective, I live in London. You know, as soon as you can get kind of cars off the road that aren't electric, would be fantastic, right? Like, think about the air quality; it's going to be amazing.
So thinking about, you started the business at 23, you sold the business in 2015, so you've got, I mean, you can relate to the lovely big exit, right?
Not at 23.
Okay.
Oh, wishful thinking.
Okay, but the big exit.
Yeah.
So 23, started 2015 you exit. I'm sure you made a few 20 pieces from that exit. What was it like at such a young age to have, you've made it, you've done it, you've created a business, you've sold it?
Well, I think it's not really all about the exit, is it? I mean, it's sort of about the journey and it's sort of about going through it. So I guess by the time I had done the exit for ClimateCars, I'd already got going on another business. Okay. So I was already doing another business called Bounce at that point. So I guess it was exciting, but I was already moving on.
So this was going alongside with.
Yeah, it was going alongside. So I guess the story is quite interesting because at the time I could see what was happening to the ClimateCars type model. You know, the Uber etc. type model was the future, and that's what we tried to do with Bounce, which was my second business. So I co-founded this business. And effectively, we came up with a very similar idea to UberX, but as we were launching, UberX sort of launched around the same time. So we were kind of running fairly parallel.
So as you were launching, you'd raise money?
Yeah, so we raised capital, and the annoying thing was, obviously, we raised 1.75 million of equity, which we felt we thought we were quite chuffed with that. And this was then, Uber then announced that they'd raised $1 billion, the most of any startup, I think, in history or something like that. And they were obviously becoming our core competitor. So this was a business, it's basically, imagine UberX, I mean, it's pretty much the same product that we came up with. And we got it going. We signed up, I don't know, 10,000 customers, 1,000 drivers or something. So we got some going with some traction, but it just became clear we were never going to be able to compete with this player like Uber. So we decided to just shut it down and return money to investors, sell tech, and we just decided it wasn't viable.
I've got to go into that. I've got to explore that then, because that's a complete contrasting story there in terms of ClimateCars success. Sold to Addison Lee, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what a great story. Bounce, all of a sudden, there's a big announcement in the press, UberX, 1 billion is their, what they've raised. So at that moment, I mean, the beautiful thing about an entrepreneur is there's always the belief they can get, but that probably was a nail in the coffin, right?
It was hugely difficult. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't alone. There were a few co-founders. We had a board. We had supportive investors and things like that. It was a sort of joint decision that we made, but it was pretty terrifying for a period. It was pretty terrifying because we were actually. What was annoying was that we were getting traction. Actually, the product was starting to work, etc. But you could just tell that we were never going to be able to compete with Uber. And many other players came along and went, and they raised millions and millions and millions of pounds and just had to shut their businesses down. I mean, you look at businesses that disappeared, like Halo, which you might have remembered, which was a black cab app. I mean, there have been tons of operators in the space that have come in and pumped a lot of money in and then disappeared. So I think we were wise to, with hindsight, looking back, I'm pleased that we shut it down when we shut it down and didn't try and go out and raise, I don't know, 100 million or something like that.
But I have to ask, therefore, how did it feel? Because it must have been such a hammer blow disappointment.
It was massive. Yeah, it was a massive hammer blow because also, you put your absolute heart and soul into as an entrepreneur, you put everything into a business. So it was a completely, it was a complete blow. So what happened was, when it happened, I think I took about, I don't know, I'd like to tell myself 6 months off. I don't think I quite managed that. I think it was probably more like 3. But I intended on taking, a good slug of time off. But what came out of that was, okay, this business hasn't worked, and these are the reasons why it hasn't worked. Got to move on and think about the next thing. And what came out of it was I'd obviously sold ClimateCars and we shut down Bounce. And what came out of it was this market's moving into all these ride-hailing drivers suddenly needing vehicles, and then there isn't a product out there for these individuals to provide the vehicles. And then hence WeFlex is born, because the idea for that came out of partly the failure of Bounce and selling the other business. So
the beauty therein of what you're describing is that through that time of reflection, licking down your wounds in some respects, because that's a big blow to have to go through. There was the opportunity where you therefore saw yourself being able to align your product to therefore the new kids on the block, the big kids on the block. Yeah,
so very quickly Uber had been the sort of foe in my life with Bounce, and they very quickly became actually a great partner, and we've worked with them incredibly closely since inception. They've been great teams of people that have worked there throughout the years, and we work with them really, really closely now. So it's ironic, isn't it, that they're the reason that one of the businesses didn't work, and they're now actually a key partner of our current business.
I think entrepreneurs, founders like yourselves I just think it's remarkable how people have the courage to take an idea, make it into reality. But where I think many people would crumble under such extreme pressure, I think it's amazing how your psyche is then moving forward. We find another way. Yeah, we find another way. We find another solution here. And that, for me, it's that mentality that I love it. I find it infectious. Has that always been, Nicko, something you've always had from a kid? You just always had that ability to.
I think it must have been, to be honest, because obviously, because I started so young. I mean, I can't tell you how many mistakes I will have made along the way. Because I started so young.
Oh,
every mistake under the sun, and so you just get used to blows and trying to figure out how to work. Problem. You just got to think around the next problem and figure out what the solution is. And I haven't yet found something where I'm just like, I've got to. I suppose Bounce was something where we said we got to stop, but I think that was the right decision. But I haven't been sort of completely beaten down by a problem, I guess.
So you launched WeFlex, and again you had some more curveballs coming towards you. Firstly, I'm sorry, it wasn't first. Maybe there were more before TfL and Uber. But all of a sudden they were revoking the license of Uber. So having built your business on Uber, now Uber could be. I'm laughing, but it's just you must have been like, oh my gosh, this is the next problem.
That was quite a fraught day. I remember I'd flown somewhere and I literally landed and I went to where I was going, and then my phone blew up with Uber have lost their license, and I remember just returning straight back to an airport and sitting in an airport lounge all day long on calls with investors and lawyers and things like that. I mean, it was terrifying, because suddenly we were thinking, actually, what does this actually mean? Do we have a business? Because Uber at that time were completely dominant. Now there are competitors to Uber, but all of our customers were Uber drivers at the time, and it looked like Uber could disappear. But obviously that's not what materialised. But yes, it was incredibly tricky.
How long did this unravel? How long did this saga go out for?
Well, so basically, you can lose your licence as an operator, but then you then get the right of appeal and you continue to operate under appeal. So they never actually, as you probably know, they never actually stopped operating at any point. But they lost their licence and then they got it back, which took another. It was within a year, but I think it was months and months and months, maybe 9 months or something. And then it happened again. So it was a real period of uncertainty.
Did you always have that conviction that what you were doing would work?
Yeah, my conviction was always that sort of the ship has sailed in this market, and that we're not going back to a model where customers are going to start ringing their local minicab firm for a taxi or a car. I just thought that this is done now. People are going to use apps to hail a vehicle. So this model is going to be there. So if Uber is, which I didn't think they would actually lose their license properly, but if they were, then another competitor would be coming up to take their place, and we had that faith that was going to happen. So again, probably quite bold. I mean, others might have said, I'm going to stop now, but I had this. I mean, I've got a very good understanding of the market, and I just sort of thought, actually, this isn't going to happen. This model's going to continue. These drivers are going to need They're going to need cars to be financed.
2020, all of a sudden...
Imagine the C word.
Well, the biggest curveball of all for you was then all of a sudden complete and utter lockdown.
Yeah, terrifying.
So terrifying, again.
Yeah, totally terrifying. That was more terrifying because that was something that we've never seen, or in our lifetimes we've never seen.
And you couldn't control.
You couldn't control at all. But that almost made it better to deal with because it actually was completely out of your control. So, you know, if you think about it, if your business goes bust because of COVID, I mean, it's very, very unfortunate, but who on earth could plan for COVID?
Yeah.
you just can't. So, but it was, for us, it was all hands to the pump, right? How do we keep this business alive? Because basically the demand obviously completely evaporated, and then existing customers struggled to make payments because their income had disappeared. So you've got your existing customers, then all the people, we've got a short-term rental business as well, which is a smaller part of the business, but it's more flexible. So as you can imagine, a lot of those cars just came back because people just said, well, I can't earn money as an Uber driver anymore, or ride-hailing driver, so I'll just return the cars. So suddenly I think we got about 200 vehicles back, which we had to store. But then obviously we had to keep paying for these vehicles and servicing the debt on them, etc. So it was incredibly difficult. But I mean, and again, look, I've obviously been through fairly rough times before in the past. So we just took a really brutal approach to every single cost in the business. We cut and sliced wherever we could. We engaged with our investors and our lenders, and we managed to get serious forbearance. We've got a lot of debt as a business, because you do when you finance vehicles. We managed to get big payment holidays and forbearance from our lenders, which meant that actually we were able to keep the cash balance pretty stable. In fact, it was stable throughout really? COVID because of that. So we never got into a position where we were going, right, we're going to run out of cash, because we planned, we very quickly took action to maintain the cash balance. And then it sort of flatlined for a bit, where basically the business was just incredibly difficult, very little, low payments coming in every week. Then it gradually started to improve. And then we took the decision over, I think this is 2020, over the summer, we got all these cars back. We were thinking, right, well, we're just going to dispose of loads of them. So we started this massive disposal program and sold hundreds of cars, because we thought, well, when's this going to actually properly end? And we're going to switch the business completely over to electric vehicles. So at that point, we were mainly hybrid. We had some electric, but the market was going electric, and there was a couple of things that sort of were materializing. One was that new electric cars having a better range and a better price. So you were actually able to acquire electric cars with 250, 300, almost 300 miles of range for a sensible, affordable price, which hadn't happened before then. So we said, right, now is the time to just completely flip the business into electric. So we will dispose of unwanted vehicles now, and we will flip the business completely into an electric vehicle focused business. And so that decision happened over the summer of 2020. And we gradually, as the lockdowns eased, we got going again. We started buying electric cars. Then another lockdown happened again, number 2, slowed it down again. Started to get going again, lead into Christmas, slowed it down again for lockdown number 3, and then we popped out of lockdown number 3, and we got going pretty aggressively, actually. And
you mentioned, we talked about the fact that you're risk taking and whatever else, and you mentioned communication there was key. Have you always communicated well with investors, because it's quite stressful sort of borrowing all that money, but it sounds like it's something that stood you in good stead? Yeah,
that's one of the things I learned pretty early, is that you've got to communicate with your core investors and lenders. And I communicate. It's one of the things that I'm pretty good at, is communicating and just being open and honest about things. There's no point in sugarcoating the impact of COVID. There's no point in sugarcoating the impact of Uber losing their license. It's better to be straightforward with people and say, well, these are the risks, but this is why I believe we can go through. And that seems to have worked so far.
Yeah, I agree. I think honesty is the most important thing, and I just believe you can never get in trouble if you're honest.
Yeah. You're bloody
No, I
investing.
agree with you.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. Yeah.
Well, too much trouble anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you can make and I also think we all make mistakes, and I've made so many mistakes over my life, and I'm very happy to put my hand up when I made a mistake, and I think that goes a long way as well. And I prefer when people that are, working for me on my team, I'd much rather they just said when they made a mistake, and then you can just move forward.
You can deal with it, can't you? And then like move on, as opposed to it raising its head like 6 months later.
Exactly. Covering something up is
it's the worst.
not good. Yeah.
I'm always just interested in the dynamic with investment. Clearly what you're talking about is a great strategy of how you manage your investors, but you've clearly had no problem raising investment. Now, for especially businesses like yours, whereby there is that capital requirement, which therefore means you have to go and raise that, access that big chunk of money to be able to do what you want to do. For people watching this, what are your top tips for being able to nail that investment and get that money and to help you therefore, realise your dream?
I think fundamentally you've got to have a credible plan, credible business plan, a decent team, a believable, to your points, believable projections that are not completely crazy. And then I think you've got to have a lot of resilience, because you're going to get a lot of no's. Like I've had so many no's over my life. You've got to network a lot, as much as you possibly can. It's all about getting as many contacts as you possibly can. I think there's a fair amount of luck involved as well. I mean, again, we met. I remember I met Triple Point through a contact, and they proved to be a fantastic partner for the business. I mean, they backed us right at the beginning. They're still with us now, and they've lent us millions and millions and millions of pounds. They continue to lend us millions of pounds, and it's been a good partnership.
Big shout out to Triple Point.
Yeah, we like Triple Point.
We like Triple Point in this room.
Yeah. So they've been great, and as of our equity investors as well. So what else do I think? I mean, at the moment we're in the middle of a cap raise at the moment. We're doing a debt and equity raise, and we've actually got corporate finance advisors helping us, because it's that level up in terms of the amount of money that we're raising now is just significantly more than we've raised in the past. So I guess I'm doing that now.
In your life?
No, I haven't raised that much capital before. And historically, I've used we've used a business angel network before to kind of get introductions and things. But I think the best investors have come via you meet somebody, they quite like it, and then they bring in other people who they know and they think would be a good fit. If I think about the core investors for WeFlex, it sort of happened a bit like that. Sort of met one person, they recommended another person, and then suddenly within this sort of tight group, it was sort of done.
You're constantly spending money, raising money. It's quite sort of stressful. There's a lot of pressure. Does it worry you, or does it drive you, or is it a bit of both?
Probably a bit of both. I've always had it. I think that's the thing. Like literally since I was 23. I mean, I've literally I've not been not responsible for this for my whole life. So no, it's not what stops me from sleeping. I think, intensely stressful situations is where you would suddenly have issues sleeping, like the kind of things we touched on earlier on. COVID was pretty challenging.
How do you deal with it? How do you deal with that intense stress? That's the word you just used, intensely stressful.
It's incredibly stressful. You have to try and have some sort of balance, which is incredibly difficult especially when you're a solo founder, which I am. I do as much yoga as I can get my head around.
Really?
Yeah, but again, it's time. I've got a young kid now and family and everything like that. So it's quite balancing it is quite challenging.
So the advice is just try.
Yeah.
Even if you might not achieve it.
Well, you've got to be realistic. I mean, lots of people, in an ideal world, and I don't do this, you'd probably get up every morning and meditate for a bit or something like that. But I can't say I've ever done that. But if you could try and balance yourself, then I think that'd be great. But I think, look, I'm probably a bit of a workaholic, to be honest, because it's been my life. You're
a solo founder. It can be quite lonely. How have you got people? You said you had a family. So is your wife involved in the business? Or do you keep that completely separate? Have you got that support? Yeah. So she's not involved in the business, but she's definitely definitely a sounding board. Definitely a sounding board. So I obviously look, friends and. I've always had a board, and I've always had interesting people that have helped me. So I've always relied on. I've got a great chairman at the moment, who I rely on a lot for advice and help. I've always had advisors around the place to get help from. But I mean, look, you can't get away from the fact. Yes, it's lonely and challenging. And I think if I look back at one of my probably the biggest things I would love to have changed would be to have a kind of a consistent business partner.
Really, I was going to ask that question. No, is it being a lone founder something that's the only way you could operate? No, it's not. I don't think it is. It's sort of. I mean, again, the first business I started was very much my own thing, and so I just naturally started it by myself. But I think it would have been a lot easier if I had have found somebody else to do it with. But I think at that point in my life,
it was very early stage, right? And no one else was doing anything like me. They were all going off to go and do sensible jobs and things like that. So I think, you know, I just wanted to get on and do it. I think WeFlex, I did start with a co-founder, and actually it didn't quite work out. So he left after after about a year. So that's a shame, because there was the intention to start with There was the intention, but I think that would be something, as and when I do something else, I think I will really go out of my way to try and find a co-founder.
Hopefully, Nicko, you've had pretty much your life share of major curveballs. I'm sure they'll always be curveballs, but you've had some pretty big stuff you've had to consistently deal with. You're now at a point, obviously, the growth is superb, the next level of funding for the business. So what does the future look like now? What sort of targets you're setting yourself, where you want to take this baby? So
the first sort of, I suppose, it's not a small target, but for the first immediate targets, we want to get to 5,000 electric cars, which is a kind of a London and some other cities. That's our sort of initial approach. And then there's a bigger plan to get it a lot bigger than that, where we think that this model can work in other countries as well. So I think we're thinking we want to scale this business.
So you got the eye on countries.
Yes, so it's more scale. I think the opportunity in the UK is huge and very untapped. So I want to start with that and not get too unfocused by other things. But yeah, just grow this business, I think, and see where it takes me. Yeah,
and there's some clearly then some quite a big timeline. Then I mean, if you're thinking like that, that's probably some more years you're investing in this business.
Well, there is. I think. Look, there are clean air zones coming in pretty much all the cities across the UK.
Yeah.
TfL have got all kinds of restrictions about, you know, how you license new cars. So the model, and Uber have committed to be 100% electric by 2025 in London.
2025.
Yes, very very soon. So and as they're very early on in that journey, so there's a huge opportunity just in London. So for thousands and thousands of vehicles. So that's pretty exciting.
So you should get to that 5,000 mark.
Well, that's what we're hoping. That's what we're hoping. I mean, you know, it's a big opportunity for sure.
Is it, because obviously this business number 3,
yeah.
When business number 3 goes for a ridiculous amount, massive success, will there be a business number 4? Is this something, is this in your blood and you're never going to get it out of your system? Or do you think after this one it'll be like, do you know what, I deserve to go and sit on a beach or in Miami or whatever. Yeah, put your feet up.
I'd be a nightmare sitting on a beach. Yeah. No, I'll obviously go and do something else. But I mean, I don't.
Obviously.
But it doesn't necessarily mean I'll do a complete startup. I don't know. I mean, I can't see myself not running a business in some extent. I mean, it's a really difficult question, because I mean, part of me is thinking, you know, it'd be nice to try something else, but we'll. I mean, again, I'm in my head, I'm still very deep in WeFlex. I can't really see what's next yet. I think I'll probably have to exit and then take a bit of time out and figure out what's next.
You strike me, Nicko, as someone who has absolute, and I have so much respect for people like this, because this is not in my DNA, but super focus.
Yes.
Is that right? When you set yourself a target or working on something, you can absolutely immerse yourself in it.
Yes, I'm very focused. And I don't do anything else. So it's not like I'm not trying to, you know, try and get on other boards or do anything like that. I'm just very focused on one business at the moment.
Is there anything that I could do to get myself more super? Is there any tips, anything you can really help me here, brother? Is there anything you could help me with this? Because it's so important.
I think you just have to be interested in what you're doing and like what you're doing. I think that's a key part of running a business. You've got, you know, if you're enjoying what you're doing, then it's easy to be focused, in my opinion. If you're not, then it's probably incredibly difficult.
There's a lot you've learned. A hell of a lot you've learned, especially having started in your very early 20s, especially when you think of these huge obstacles. I mean, because these are huge obstacles that are being put in your way. If there's any way you could condense, like, your main sort of piece of advice into fledgling businesses in terms of, you know, what is it that you need to do to just keep on that track to achieving great things with business, what would it be?
I think when you're going into running your own business, you've got to go into it with a realistic outlook that it's going to be tough and there's going to be multiple curveballs thrown at you. I've never run a business where you don't have multiple curveballs thrown at you. Yeah. So you've got to have resilience. You've got to accept the fact that it's tough. You're going to probably be paid a lot less than people for quite a long time. Like it's a long haul. It's really difficult. It's not in the least bit glamorous, or not in my experience. It's not anyway. And then I think one of my earliest lessons was cash flow, which I know everyone always talks about. But managing cash, I learned within about the first year of ClimateCars in quite an intense way, which is basically you had all this revenue coming in, but actually it was all business clients, and so actually they didn't pay you on time. So while you're meant to have cash, you don't actually have the cash. I didn't really understand that until then. So obviously cash flow is absolutely key, and then I think people, like it's all about the people. It's all about the people. So you've got to look after your people. You've got to hire good talent. You've got to nurture good talent. What else? I mean, those are the key things that I would focus on.
Do for me.
I would think so. Hopefully that answers it.
This guy's the king of resilience.
Certainly is.
I mean, it just seems that you've had so many things thrown at you, and you've used the word quite commonly, terrified. You've been terrified by some of these experiences, but you've kept going. You've never let them beat you. And what I love is about this story is you've found ways to actually create solutions that have been, so for example, you take Uber, caused by the big problem that came, but you then make your business run parallel with that. Genius, I love it. Huge congratulations, Nicko, for staying the course.
Thanks, John.
Well, no, seriously, because I think a lot of people would have surrendered with some of these obstacles, but huge congratulations for everything you're doing with WeFlex. Can't wait to see you get to 5,000 vehicles and beyond.
Yeah.
So many thanks for joining us today. It's been great to talk to you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.